Then over to you, Ryan.
It sounds good. Again, I mean, I didn't put everything in the template, but let's kind of walk through. One of the reasons why I'm doing the MBA is to understand everything that you guys were just talking about, right? Because I mean, when you get into all the details, right? I was a little bit lost. I can't lie. I don't know about anyone else, but one of the things that I've seen since 2015, we really have seen, when you say safety is the most important thing when it comes to these types of batteries and these types of power. The reality is that since 2015, there's been an epidemic that really swept across waste and recycling facilities, and I've been at the heart of that in the U.S. and Canada, and then obviously for there's a ton of different studies and a ton of different research that's been done. In the beginning, the whole idea, nobody really understood that batteries were coming, right? End of life. And we all understand that from a reuse perspective, it's always better to reuse, but from a recycle perspective, people truly don't understand the dangers of batteries, right? And I think we're seeing a ton of this now, where you're having fires that are happening in residential and commercial where for the first 5 years it was really only happening in a it was only happening in waste and recycling facilities where we're hard on our trash, right? So what I started doing was reporting these fires early on in 2015, 16, and 17. I was warning the industry really at that point in time that there was a lithium-ion battery wave that was coming to waste and recycling facilities across the world. It was interesting. This year, this was in 2016. Really, in 16 and 17, this was really, where we were talking about the wave coming. In 18, it really hit, right? So this is where, our Japanese Packaging Association had seen felt like a 5 times increase in fires. We're seeing it from the UK because the UK, requires reporting these types of fires. So, so there was a lot of different data that was coming in from a number of different sources. And then around 19 and 20, we're really seeing the numbers start to go down. So everyone thought that education was working, right, and really trying to teach people about curbside recycling and all the different layers. But in 2021 we saw a huge increase, right, and again then in 22 we saw our worst year ever. And this year we're starting to see it come down a little bit. And the reality is the reason why I do all this is truly to understand. I mean, we do have a solution to solve these problems. So really the idea is how do we get to that point in the US and then outside from a global perspective. Understand that on the front end, you guys being, whoever's working on that front end side, yes, we have to make as safe as material as possible. But in reality, that commercialization means that we're going to be dealing with these batteries in our waste and recycling streams for decades, right? I mean, it's the numbers that everybody says from an EV perspective. Really, here we're dealing with a ton of the portable electronics and personal storage. But we are seeing battery packs that are getting in. So imagine somebody's stealing a car and they're breaking it up and they have a battery, right? The battery, they don't even know what to do with it, so they throw it in trash or they throw it in a recycling bin, and you really don't know what we're looking for on the tip floors of these facilities. So really, and again, I'll go quickly because I know we only have about 10 minutes left. I've broken this out in the different areas that we have our fires, right? And really waste and paper and plastics where you're hearing the most of it. And really that's where, you see all this education and the education of like, how do you, make sure that you put your vape into, or bring it to a proper recycler as opposed to putting in a curbside bin, because again everybody thinks that for some reason a disposable vape is something that can be recycled, and we're dealing with millions and millions of these at the time. But really, this is the waste paper and plastic. This is where the public actually can help from an education perspective. But really from metal, it's scrap metal, obviously e-scrap, which is the electronic scrap that we're talking about specifically, hazard materials, all these different levels. The batteries get into the stream and there's no way to educate your way out of it, right? So if you're a scrap metal facility and you get a car, you actually can't go inside the car to take out anything that's inside. So just imagine your car's in a car accident, how many batteries are actually sitting inside the seats, how many batteries are sitting, hidden. And because of drug use, right, you can't open the car door and put your hand in to try to find these batteries because, in theory, you could hit a fentanyl, you could hit a fentanyl, um, or a stash of fentanyl, right? And then again, it's not worth that risk, right? So really, they're taking the risk of seeing these get into every single part of their stream, across the board. So this is really, and again, I show this as our performance. The reason I say that is we have a solution where we do early detection. We utilize, FLIR, we utilize optical flame detection, and then we utilize smoke versus steam analytics. And, we're really looking at every single fire and every single event. So in the US, Canada, France, and the UK and Australia, we have over 500 facilities that we're protecting. None of them have had a catastrophic loss. So all these, things that you're seeing in the news about catastrophic losses in these 30 to $50 million facilities that are being brought offline, we've been able, fortunately, to have built a solution that has stopped that from happening. And again, we're doing enough of the U.S., where we believe we're going to start seeing the number of fires go down over the next couple of years because of the number of facilities that we are covering. But the reality is that when you're dealing with a confirmed fire hotspot, we're seeing 9 of these per fire rover box. So, the reality is we're seeing a ton of these fires happening on these facilities. The difference between our solution and any other solution is that we actually have a human being that looks at it, verifies it, and reacts to it. So, the reality, we've seen about 3,000 confirmed fire hotspots. This is 22. I have 23 data actually coming out. We pressurized about 12% of the time. And then we've activated 137 times, right, which means that we've actually sprayed, and then we've dispatched the fire department or fire brigade 5% of the time. So, this year with the new data, I mean, we're literally dealing with hundreds of thousands of false alarms. We've never had a catastrophic loss, and we've never had a false deluge. So really, the idea is, how many of these saves are we going to have? The publicly reported fires go down, the total known incidents go up, but the reality is we start to hopefully see less of these catastrophic losses, which is really the big problem in the industry. It's okay to have a fire. You have an inherent risk of fire in a business. That's okay. But the reality is that the like that overall period of time, we have to do something to deal with these on a really incipient level. The real scope of the problem, and again, this is, there was a study that was done by Unomi in the UK, and they were looking at, really the number of fires that they're seeing and why they're seeing them and what the costs are to them. So really what we're seeing is that the severity of these fires have been going up, and really it's about length of disruption. So really, if your business is down for 1 day or more, that's really 75% of the respondents from a fire, which is a huge problem, right? For us, we're always in this minimal disruption piece of it. And again, it's really about the severity of the fire. How long are you down really talks about the fire severity. And then also it talks about the damages. And in the US alone, based on these numbers, right, like this is 1.2 billion annually in the US and Canada, which again, these numbers are based in, for the UK. So the reality, again, 141, you're dealing with a significant amount of costs. And again, these costs right here are waste site operators and insurance companies, right? So that's who's paying the majority of these costs. So the reality is, right, you have manufacturers, you have EPR, and all these things that are happening from an extended producer responsibility. Who's going to be responsible from this from a supply chain perspective? But really, I think that's one big issue. And then the fire and rescue, there's a significant tax to the fire and rescue guys who truly don't understand how to fight a lithium-ion battery, right? If they're getting any training, it's around EVs. It's not around personal storage. It's not around personal electronics. And of course, you're seeing all these different pieces. So, the reality is we're also seeing a ton of injuries. I mean, not a ton of the injuries are usually to the fire departments, not to, not to the employees of these facilities. But again, we're also seeing deaths. So it's a small amount of deaths, but, it definitely is, this is a life and death issue that is occurring. Um, and again, I think when we get into what's really happening, this is the insurance companies. And when I was talking about 2018, the actual data of fires hitting in 18 of shredders, batteries, these are the actual claims data that the top five insurance companies that left the industry because of this. So everything that we're doing right now, where we're trying to make them safer, is actually trying to give us the ability to keep our waste and recycling infrastructure solid and safe, which is not something that we always think about, right? So the reality is, again, from an operator perspective, we need them to be good operators. We need professional response to be trained and educated, and we need them funded. But the reality is, for us, we focus on that internal response, those initial 10 minutes between a breakdown in your prevention and your fire response, and really focusing on that, and then also trying to catch the tripwire earlier in the process. So the more time we have, the more we can deal with these fires. So really, again, don't have a major fire incident. That's really the big thing. Sorry, I didn't mean to show that, but basically our solution is, it's a fire rover box. And again, I'll walk through just to go quickly. We're almost FM certified, which again, that's taken 8.5 years. But really, what's really important, I think, is just to show you some of these, because we just finished a facility that is a 350,000 square foot electronic recycler. So this is actually a hammer mill, and again, this is a hot work fire, but I mean this is in a battery recycling facility, and so we ended up this fire. You'll see we're actually looking. We verify. You're going to see us hold, and then we're going to have an employee come in, fight that fire. We all know that you shouldn't be breathing in these fumes, but again, that's not truly our responsibility. We're really working outside. We've called the fire department here. This one actually went safely. About 2 weeks later, there was another fire. It's been in the news, but basically we put this fire out. It was twice the size. And then we called the fire department. They arrived 40 minutes later. And then they went to use water, and the water was shut off by the utility. So this was a catastrophic loss. This is the facility that this is another of batteries, right? And again, these are all button cell batteries. But again, you're going to see, and this is, it's a 12-minute video that is sped up. But I mean, we're spraying that with a human agent, and then also they're spraying with our CAF system. So we have these compressed air foam systems that are being used to basically stop that chain, which is really what we do, right? We're always trying to soak these batteries. Like if you look at it from a waste, this was actually a bike battery that had shrapnel shooting throughout the facility, right? We had 5 different fires that started. And again, our agents looking at it, they verify, they fight, they charge our unit, and then they're spraying all of these different fires, and the fire department arrives on scene. And again, they're safe, there's no injuries and all the different things that kind of come with it. We do like a continuous flow solution, which is really where we're getting to replacing fire sprinklers. And that's where, we just finished one of the largest recyclers in the US for black mass, 106 cameras, 57 nozzles, 250,000 gallon tank and an inductor of an environmentally friendly wetting agent. And really the idea is really what we're doing is these are all the effects of the batteries that we're seeing, right? So, it's, keep looking if there's more like started. And again, we see a lot of these. And again, whether or not, like, if you have any sort of accelerant that's added to the fire, right? Like, so the battery can start it and be that spark. But, the reality is we're seeing a ton of these happen in a lot of different types of facilities. This one right here, if you can hear it. So that was a whole truck of batteries, button batteries that were brought to one of my customers' facilities and dumped on their floor. They caught it halfway through. So this was literally like, it was still like these were on fire as they were pouring them out. Literally, we got all the ones on the floor, but this was the outside. It literally took us 6 weeks to get rid of every single battery, because a lot of these batteries were falling into the cracks and crevices that you haven't seen in years. So, again, I mean, this is a battery as well. We look at it, we verify it, we spray it. Again, what we're trying to do is really stop it from burning. It's the collateral asset that we're really soaking the area around it. And that's really the kind of the big piece of what we're doing. So again, there's I do an annual report that I'm putting my 7th annual one out this year. So I mean, if anyone is interested in learning more about it, I mean, I get, this is the after effects, and you now see it going crazy out in the out in the in the news, you're really seeing vapes and batteries from bikes and for from all these different types of transportation things. But the reality is that these are hitting everywhere, and like we can't get to the sodium battery fast enough, right? So that is one of the things that I've learned long ago, that everyone here will be talking about it and we'll learn about it, but the reality is we're probably 20 years away from replacing, and we're still dealing with these lithium batteries, for the foreseeable future. And then obviously from an end of life perspective, we're dealing with a ton of these. So this is actually the new recycling facility that we just did. I'd call it the Titanic because it's unsinkable. But the reality is that we will definitely see. We've never had a catastrophic loss start in an area that we protect, though. So, you guys have questions or anything? I mean, I know we're over time, but I do appreciate your time.
Definitely very interesting and impressive, the videos and yeah, your technology. They definitely made a lot of sense to include that in the facility. There are a couple of questions. Maybe Fabio, you can start.
Yes. So,
Fabio? Yeah, please go.
Ryan, I would start with my second question. Is the foam cannon steered automatically? Like, do you have a heat detection, a camera, and then like a software behind it, or do you need to steer that by an operator?
So it's needed to be. We have operators, right? And that's what we use, a human element, and that's what our patent's really around. So the reality is that if you're the problem with all these systems, and again, if you look at it, like the UK went down the path where all the insurers were saying, hey, go with these automated systems. The problem with the automated system is that you really have to dumb down the system. Really, for what we do is we look at every single needle in a haystack or every single piece of hay in a haystack to find the needle. So what ends up happening is that we're constantly, those 3,000 that I showed you of fires that we found and hotspots that we found, I mean, we had 150 to 250,000 false alarms to look at those to make sure. So yes,
Okay.
everything we do is a human brain, before anything gets deployed or touched.
Okay, thanks. My second question, which is more of a comment, is the number of annual fires in the facilities that was not in relation to the facilities that are maybe growing, right? Maybe that would make sense to set it into relation.
Explain, you're saying, but the facilities that are growing?
Like the number of facilities growing. So I think it was your first chart where you just showed the number of annual fires in facilities over the years. But I think the number of facilities is growing over the years too. So that should be in relation.
Yeah, I think the number of batteries is growing. The number of facilities in the US and Canada, they're not really growing to that level again yet. I think you're right. With the electronic recyclers, we are seeing a ton of growth. We do Electronic Recyclers International. We do have someone that, there's one of the large automotive OEMs and others, right? So we probably do about 40 facilities currently, and those are definitely growing. But I think the number of transfer stations and the number of total facilities carrying these is actually probably remaining relatively stable, and if anything, it grows at 2 to 3%. So I mean, I 100% agree, but at the same time, really my job or my goal has been since 15 to get enough facilities covered that we are able to really knock down the amount of catastrophic losses that we're seeing inside these facilities. Because the 400 number that I'm showing, those are only reported by the media. So the reality is that, the number of unreported fires, I mean, literally could be as high as about 50,000 fires that we're seeing that are non-reported.
Okay. Yeah. Well, great work. So thank you.
Makes sense. Thank you. Thank you, Ryan and Fabio for asking. Maybe Christine, the last questions for if you. Christine, if not, okay, Ryan, the question from Christine is, do you mainly focus on waste shredder facility with the sprinkler technology, or also provide box system for monitoring EVs batteries or contain a thermal run through?
Yeah, I mean, and we can put our facilities anywhere. Those boxes can literally be placed anywhere, but we also use, I mean, so we've replaced we've got a number of variances for Fire Rover as your primary system, as you can imagine. I mean, sprinkler systems in industrial facilities or outdoors, right? It just doesn't make sense, right? I mean, like, so we are the only outdoor, in theory, sprinkler system with a brain. Indoors, the box goes outside, it's heated, it's cooled, and then on the inside, we're basically looking at and verifying and before we spray on the inside. The reality is there's a lot of other markets that it makes sense for. Just waste and recycling really was the first one that, you know, it was 15 when we started our company, and it just literally had a need that hadn't grown in a long time, right? They had always had fires and waste and recycling, but they were hazards you could identify on the front end and pre-sort their way out of it. So, you know, think a propane tank, think fireworks, think hot briquettes, those types of things, pool chemicals, right? Add in the lithium-ion batteries, and now you really, you know, a propane tank, you know, it's a propane tank. It's coming in, it always looks the same, so you can spot it. But when you have batteries that are, you know, they're inside electronics or they're inside paper, like, I mean, honestly, like you see a ton of marketing material with a video in it and a battery on the side, those things cause a ton of havoc when they're getting through the sorters and all the different pieces of you know, you know, or shredders. So yeah, we're seeing those. I mean, you know, really it's the amount and where we're seeing them, which is in the entire process, even in the end. So a lot of the material at the end, what you see here, this is like fluff. So it's auto shredder residue. So it's everything that's not ferrous or non-ferrous. It's just plastic, it's carpet, it's, you know, all the different material. We're seeing them in the after piles as well. So, you know, it is definitely you know, it's definitely causing a unique challenge among the industry, and it's happening in every single, you know, MRF transfer scrap, you know, across the globe.
Thank you for that, Ryan. Maybe the last question is for MedLiap. It's, does the NFPA 855 is inherent mandatory for such kind of industrial?
It doesn't. I mean, we've been written into NFPA. We're actually written into the construction demolition, you know, and then we've also, you know, 409 was just changed. So, I mean, if you look at NFPA as a whole, I'm on the hazard material subcommittee for, you know, you know, hazard materials, recommended best practices. But I mean, the real reality with NFPA is that it's always behind, right? I mean, we always know that, you know, these rules take forever, right? I mean, so the fact that we've actually been written into some of the codes less than 8 years in has been, you know, nominal change. And if you look at the way that the world fights its fires, it's really water, water, water. Deluge systems, sprinkler systems, you know, put as much water as you can on it. The problem is a lot of times when we're fighting these fires, the reality is you don't want to use water, right? You actually want to use concrete, or you want to use, you know, major industrial fires to try to control them. So, you know, it's a whole new, you know, way for the fire industry to look at it. And we're really, you know, pioneering that, you know, with our technology and our patents. So what's nice is that, you know, NFPA or FM came out 3 years ago and said using our type of solution uses 92% less water than, you know, a standard sprinkler system on the same type of fire when you're dealing with pallets that are stacked too high or less. Right. So, you know, yes, we're doing more and more of the industrial side of this business and more of the outdoor side. But the reality, I mean, it is definitely still a water world out there. And, you know, I think, you know, from a environmental perspective, I mean, fire water, I mean, it's not unusual to see that in a fire in one of these facilities, they've used 500,000 to 1,000,000 gallons of water. And unfortunately, right, that's all fire water, right? Every single thing that you see in it is, you know, so we use 1,000 gallons and you can clean it up relatively easy. You use 1,000,000 gallons and you're dealing with, you know, deluge all over, you know, in most of the, you know, reservoirs or anything else that's anywhere around it, unless you know, there's a dike built for that specific application.
Thank you for all this very insightful response, and definitely makes sense to you, and congrats on the waste front that you are there, reducing that fires. Or yeah, that's great and definitely needed. Good, then thank you all for joining. Hopefully, yeah, see you tomorrow or on Monday's lecture. thank you for joining. And yeah, very, very easy. If there are some remaining in the chat, please, we would use that Slack channel. And last, Ryan, you mentioned that you wanted to have insights from the cell, from the chemistry. Definitely, we would have in the Mondays in two weeks time, we would have that also for you. That's great.
Well, I was
Good.
going to say, I can't say that I'm going to understand everything, but it's better to
Mm.
understand what we're dealing with so that I can help. Because honestly, this is
Definitely.
one of those things that, there's a lot on the front end being talked about, but really the back end dealing with the hazards is, there's not as much expertise, right? So, we definitely need all the help we can get.
Definitely. Thank you. Thank you for all for joining, and have a nice day.
Awesome.
Thank you
Thank you,
all.
guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.